Hello, and welcome to Metachemistry. This is episode 114. And for tonight, we have a mission briefing episode. This is where we take one of the ITS missions and kind of discuss how the mission functions, things that you might want to focus on during the mission, advantageous sorts of troops, game plans going in and to try and maintain throughout, and just generally have a discussion over how to approach one of these missions. And for this episode, that mission is going to be B-Pong. And so B-Pong was in season 15 and then was reintroduced in season 16, part 2, where we are now with a little bit of changes. Yeah, one of those missions I feel like was kind of maligned before, but I think is a lot more interesting these days. But before we get into that, we want to thank our sponsor, Mo Games, which you can find over at mo-games.com. And as part of their sponsorship of Metachemistry, any paid patron of ours gets a 10% coupon code to Mo Games Store. And if you are part of our Discord, whether you're a patron or not, you're entered into a raffle for a $40 coupon code each month. So to be a part of that, just join us over on our Discord and hang out and chat with us. Because what's better than games? Mo Games. And another order of business, we want to talk about the Krug briefly. The Corvus Belli Krug is going to be the kickoff for ITS Season 17, and that's going to happen this summer, August 22nd through the 24th. Now, originally this was a 100-person event, and they had kind of a backup or overflow that they could accommodate. So they broke that goal, which is awesome. I believe there are about 110 or so, and the maximum cap is 120. So if you are looking to come out to Colorado, play in the Krug, make sure to register. We'll have links on our Discord, and we'll go ahead and post that on our other channels as well, so you can reach out for that, because it's going to be a great time. And we also have one of our listeners, Russell Nygaard, who very generously donated us a Corregidor army and wanted to see that go to a good home. And so that is going to be one of our special prizes that we are collaborating with the Krug on, is getting it over to them so we can get that to a nice new home for a good new Nomad player. So that'll be exciting. Thank you again, Russell. That was super, super kind of you. We really appreciate it. With all that said, I have Ian and Ahsoka tonight, and how have things been with you guys? What is your hobby and gaming endeavors kind of looked like over the last little bit?
Well, I've been having a blast playing a whole bunch of Infinity. We still get by every week, and it's been a lot of fun playing some of these oddball missions, such as B-Pong, Evacuation, and Last Launch. But that was for one of our local tournaments. Was just full of crazy nonsense. That was pretty fun. They're ridiculous missions, and I love them dearly, and kinda don't like them, but kinda do. My thoughts are complicated because, like,
Yeah.
Evacuation. I'll just talk about this one. If we look at that at a competitive level at a tournament, it's such a low scoring game generally because it's really order intensive and difficult to do. So then, whenever you have that in a tournament, that really helps skew the points discrepancy between several of the good players by margins, right? Like if you get paired against a good matchup, like let's say your faction just completely beats them or something, or your list is built really well to beat your opponent's faction, you could just score exponentially higher than some other people.
Sure. Yeah.
That's kind of the gatherings that I've gotten from it, from playing it. And it's not on the docket in the near future, so I don't have to worry about it. B-Pong is, though, so I'm excited to talk about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dipping a little bit of White Company. That's been fun.
Ooh.
Yeah, pretty cool. Aquid's a drug.
Is that your first foray into non-JSA NA2? Not that they are anymore, but you used to be an NA2 player technically.
Yeah, I did. Now I'm returning to my fifth roots. I don't know. Yeah, pretty much. I played some Foreign Company beforehand because I really like Senior Massacre and Valkyrie and all that business. And now they're just in White Company, so that's why I'm there.
Nice. Very cool. And been getting in some Warcrow, sounds
Yeah.
like, which I've been meaning to do. My stuff's just gotten in, so I haven't really played much at all, but I'm looking forward to.
Nice. You got to give it a try. We have been playing Warcrow. It's been a lot of fun. I really like how the game functions at its core. There's a little bit of hiccups here and there in the rules that make me very excited for a second edition.
It's pretty early into a first edition
I
still
know,
for
hey,
that,
I know what I'm saying.
but fair. What about you, Ian?
I don't get to do anything. I've been moving. So,
Yeah, has been
uh,
quite the time sink lately.
yeah. So, unfortunately, I haven't been able to really get out and do much of anything. All my stuff's in storage. It's been a time. So, outside of that particular horrible thing of having to move, when I have been able to play games, Warcrow has been a ton of fun. I've been rotating through factions
Mhm.
and that, just throwing different models on the table, seeing what they do, and having a blast with that. I'm really excited for that game. And as far as Infinity, Shinbutai continues to be my focus of the season. All the games I have with them have a ton of fun,
Nice.
and I'm really excited because of the pretty consistent release schedule that they've been getting. So we're getting,
For
yeah,
sure.
there's not a whole lot left that they really need to fill out now because they've gotten almost all of it.
Yeah. It's like one profile with a Shizoku HRL that I think people would want.
Maybe some more of the Tanukis with different loadouts.
I could see
Yeah.
that.
That's the big one that I see. But outside of that, I mean, they really got
Not at all.
pretty much everything has at least one model.
Right, right.
Yeah, so it's very useful. I've been really enjoying the sculpts, the concepts on them. It's been fantastic. Give me more. But the remotes, their size 3 remotes have come out, and that's been
Yeah.
awesome because that's now something that I do not need to proxy with other things. I don't need to use Pano remotes.
Fair.
Yeah, that's where I am too.
Yeah. Well, it made sense. I had them with them because in N3 and 4, they used Pano remotes because that's where they were receiving kind of their funding and a lot of their equipment from was Pano when they split. But the new lore and everything going on, like they've been able to get their own R&D going and get their own remotes and stuff. That's really cool. I'm hoping in maybe another edition or so they get their own combat remotes and move away from the Yuching ones.
I could see it. And on my end, we've wrapped up the Training Incident League, which is the Grow League that I've been running for the last couple months. We're about to try and get as many people as we can together for our little award ceremony and stuff, just to kind of recognize some fun things that happened and give away some prizes and stuff like that, which is really cool.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, should be a good time. I'm hoping at least half the people will be able to make it. I'm not hopeful for much more than that because organizing almost 30 people is
Oh
tricky.
yeah.
Otherwise, I've been mostly bouncing between OSS and Tunguska, and that's kind of my happy place right now. And I've gotten in a game of Kestrel recently, and that was pretty fun. And I do want to get more paint on them and more table time, but that's still in progress.
What do you like about Kestrel?
I feel like they just have a really good spread of tools. It's one of those factions where I feel like they can't take everything they would want in a list, but they have some of almost anything you would generally want,
Yeah.
which kind of reminds me of Tunguska a little bit. And I know that Tunguska has been expanded somewhat over the last, especially since they launched. But yeah, I feel like you make meaningful choices and they have a lot of really interesting tools. Like it's more than kind of just straightforward, kind of stereotypical Pano, which I feel like hasn't really been the case for most of Pano for a while. Except maybe
Sure.
Neoterra. I guess Neoterra was definitely just apply big gun with look at all my BS-15 everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely feel like they have kind of some nice tricks and some interesting utility pieces, but still kind of have that general firepower superiority overall. And they've got some cool pieces for that.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So pretty cool.
Have you had a chance to play the Red Eye yet?
I haven't. I did think about it, but I ended up taking its spot and then some with a Crux Knight.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
Crux Knight
the
was super
Crux Knight.
cool.
Just chef's kiss.
Plus, it was a really good excuse to get my my old Father Knight from Ice Storm out because I just never played it because I didn't have anything that it was in. I wasn't playing military orders, and there were no like real knights in Neoterra for that
Yeah.
purpose. So it's the first time I've put them on the table other than Ice Storm demos.
It's such a cool model too.
It was a cool
Yeah,
model.
it is.
Yeah,
Okay, let me run this by. Someone talked about this recently to me, and I was like, huh, that's pretty interesting. In regards to the special die specifically,
Okay.
you can do this with anyone, but while we're talking about the Crux Knight, I figured we'd bring it up.
Sure.
Crux Knight, great in suppression, right? So good. Okay, so you have him in a link, you walk him up the field, you get him in suppression fire somehow without breaking the link. Like, let's say you have a number 2 or whatnot. I'm not sure if Kestrel does, but you would put the Crux Knight in suppression. You would switch the link leader to your other, number 2 model, and then it goes to your opponent's turn. Opponent's turn, they fight the Crux Knight, they don't kill the Crux Knight, move on with the rest of the turn, comes back to you. The Crux Knight can rejoin the fire team and break out of that suppression because you join the fire team at the states phase, right? You can join any of the states phase as long as the fire team is still up. And then when you join a fire team, it cancels the suppression fire. Pretty cool.
Interesting. I was thinking that you couldn't be in a fire team while in the suppressive fire state, and so you wouldn't be eligible to join the team.
When we had talked about it, joining a fire team cancels the state is what we had found. We'll have to dig into it a little more.
I haven't looked closely enough, but that is kind of curious because they do have some number 2 because the Black Air and Emily both
Nice.
have it. And Emily and the Crux Knight are wild cards, so they can find a place to do that.
one of the cancellation clauses of suppressive fire is the trooper joins any fire team.
There you go. Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. That is kind of cool.
You could do it with a coordinated order also, because that'll break the Crux Knight out of the fire team, but it won't break the fire team.
Yeah.
As long as he wasn't the leader at the time, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of fun. Yeah, I like that they changed the fire team rules to trigger or to rejoin at the end of each state's phase, because I believe in N4, if I remember right, it was just your state's phase. So there are situations where it triggers more frequently, or no, I think it was your tactical phase, maybe something like that. But it was tricky. Like it was really hard to actually get people back on the team that way, and it was kind of an obscure rule.
Yeah, fun to chew on.
So as far as our main topic for tonight, we're doing our mission briefing on B-Pong. So B-Pong was kind of a weird mission when it came out last season. I know it feels like 16 Part 1 was last season, but that's really only half a season.
Yeah.
Time is strange. It went away when season 16 came out, now that we're in Part 2, and it's been cleaned up a bit from last time. It's pretty interesting. I think generally it's moved in a positive direction. It's still kind of a curious mission. Generally, you have an objective in the center that you're trying to keep on top of and eventually end on your opponent's side of the table. But
Yeah.
Ian, you want to kind of walk through the main objectives for B-Pong just so we kind of have a baseline to talk through?
Yeah. The main objectives are at the end of the game, the tracking beacon is totally inside the enemy half of the table. So when you're setting up, there is a tracking beacon placed in the center, and then there are 2 consoles that are placed along the center line to either side. You move the beacon through a couple different ways, either through directly interacting with the beacon or through interacting with the console. So at the end of the game, you want to have that beacon inside the enemy's half of the table. You're trying to push it up the field, and that's worth 2 objective points. At the end of each game round, control the tracking beacon is worth 1 objective point, so a total of 3 over the course of the game. And at the end of each game round, control at least 1 console, so there's another potential 3 points over the course of a game. And then there's 2 classifieds for the remaining points.
Yeah, so it's an interesting blend of immediate scoring things, end of game scoring, and end of round scoring. So a lot to kind of keep you busy. One of the things that's kind of notable is that this is one of the missions that uses 2 tactical support options. Of the missions that
Yeah.
have them, I think most of them are 1. I haven't actually counted, but at a glance, I believe that's the case.
They're very often 1 or 0. The 3 missions that I kind of brought up earlier, B-Pong, Last Launch, and Evacuation, are the awkward ones that have 2 tactical supports as well.
Mhm.
But for the most part, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of uncommon, and we haven't really talked about tactical support on the channel, and I don't know if this is necessarily the place or time to do it, but I don't like this rule.
You don't? I
No,
love it.
I like the idea of the rule. I don't like going through the deck and trying to match the symbols and keep track of which is which and that they all declare differently from each other.
Ah,
And it's a lot of fiddly little bits. It's not wildly complicated. It's not that I don't understand it or that it is, otherwise incomprehensible. It's just a lot of fiddly little pieces that I think slow down the game. I think being able to choose some of those effects are cool. There's interesting little tidbits there, but overall, they're generally pretty low impact. You have to separately go into the ITS document because these aren't in Comlog, and I know maybe not everyone uses Comlog, but
or
everyone I
Army.
know uses it, or in Army. And so it's a lot of cross referencing, and a lot of the symbols look similar at a glance if you're not familiar with the deck immediately.
Yeah.
And so just little things like that. I think the overall rule is probably fine, but I wish that there were some interaction pieces that would be cleaned up a little bit just to make it easier to reference.
Sure. Better way to implement it.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think currently I feel like it's a net negative to the experience, but I think it could be a
Mm.
positive with some tweaking to kind of clean it up.
Sure.
Counterpoint. I
Hmm.
enjoyed it a lot in every game that we've used it. And I feel it really
Hmm.
brings value to the cards because by using those symbols off of the resilience operations deck, a part of the deck that you normally wouldn't be touching regardless, it gives a little bit
Yeah.
more value to owning that deck. It also gives a little bit more interactivity to the game, which, yes, they should add things into Army. Yes, Comlog being a separate project, it would be nice if it was in there. But it's in a PDF. Everybody has a phone. Like, it's not like it's not accessible. I like what it does. And honestly, like a lot of the stuff that's come up has been absolutely clutch in a lot of the games because I've been running for the tournament that we did all these missions. I've been running a lot of hidden deployment troops. And my
Hmm.
opponents somehow always draw the card that gives us one of their guys' sensor.
Hmm.
And
Sure.
it has come up several times where that's been really key to them being able to take a win because they've been able to reveal my hidden deployment guys. There's been a
Sure.
few other things that have popped up that, being able to make this guy a specialist or be able to give this specialist this kind of thing where, yeah, it's a little random, but the stuff gets used. And I think that it's really kind of a
Sure.
neat option. But I'm also the weird player that liked all the old ITS season stuff. Now I'm not talking about the last few seasons. I'm talking about like the one 5 sets before the last like 3 seasons where we got some of the really weird options on things that were just a little off the wall. And I liked that a lot. And so this feels a bit like some of that coming back to me.
Like I said, I don't mind the effects. I mind the resolution of the mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, you could say that you get more value out of a operations deck by using those symbols, but those symbols are not used for anything else. And the deck is already a mandatory purchase effectively for ITS play because of the classifieds. So it's
Yeah.
not like anyone's getting it just for that purpose because they already needed it if they're playing
Yeah.
ITS. You just roll a die.
If you're not playing resilience ops,
Yeah, rolling a die
you
would
don't
work.
need those cards. And yes, you have to buy them because they're part of the deck. But if
Mhm.
you just don't want to play resilience ops, it's not your game mode, and it's not for everybody. I
Mhm.
love it, but I
Sure.
think I've heard a lot of people that don't like it You have these cards that you had to buy because you needed the rest of the stuff in the deck. Now, at least those cards have some purpose for you. But yes, it could be a die roll. You are not wrong.
I feel like if you just rolled a d20 instead, that would be much better. Because I don't feel like that is a value add to my purchase. Like, it doesn't, just because I pulled them out for this, in my mind, that doesn't make me feel like, ooh, this is really worthwhile now. At least now these do something. When I'd rather it just be easier to use the thing than say, okay, well, this arbitrary round target symbol is different than this other arbitrary round target symbol. And so I get, hold on. Wait, nope. Hold on. Other page. Let that load on my phone.
Yeah.
That ability. Yes. I will take one Blitzen, sir. Thank you. So,
Hell yeah, Blitzen.
Concede some of your points. But my 15 by 20 foot storage unit filled floor to ceiling, front to back, with all of my nerd crap says that they know exactly their target market, and that is me. And I need all the swag and all the little tiny things in physical form because I don't have a problem. I'm perfectly fine and normal.
oh, as opposed to the digital dice that you assume I'm rolling?
Yeah.
The non-physical dice? Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Hey, you can get a digital dice roller. I know you.
Oh my god, that'd be awful. I don't think I'd play Infinity with somebody digitally rolling their dice.
No.
It does feel off. That's an interesting topic for another discussion, but it's kind of curious. I hadn't thought about that seriously. So, B-Pong. I mean, I know this is an audio format, but we need a tangent counter for this episode, I think. Oh, pretty sure we're at 3.
At least.
Keep it going.
Yeah. So, if we look at B-Pong, those are kind of the ways that you score, right? Other things that are important, just kind of side things to keep in mind during the mission. One, during deployment, there is an exclusion zone, but it is a bit different than usual in that it is a 4-inch on either side of the center line. So it's only an 8-inch exclusion band instead of the usual 16-inch exclusion band. Also, the deployment zones are 16-inch deployment zones, which is pretty notable. So those are things that you really want to keep track of when you're playing this mission. Also, that the mission doesn't end in retreat, which can be relevant. This also means that you can really unload on your opponent and pick things up off the board without worrying about ending the game early, because that's often a struggle if there's end of round scoring, as you put your opponent into retreat, start of their second turn or something like that, and then, okay, well, there goes the scoring. But as far as interacting with the extra pieces on this mission, so we have the tracking beacon and the consoles. And Azoka, do you kind of want to talk about those a little bit in terms of how each of those take part in this mission?
Sure. Let's start with the tracking beacon. Notably, it's supposed to be a 25 millimeter token in the center of the board. So it's never going to block your line of sight. It is much smaller than any of the large 30 mil or however big they are normal objectives. That's something that I find myself running into a lot, where at an event they won't put the thing. So just make sure to pay attention to that. But if you want to interact with it, you just take your specialist up there. You're going to move up to it and do a short skill, which is great. It's not going to take any sort of roll. You are going to reposition the beacon. And I believe it is 4 inches. Is that right?
Anywhere within 4 inches of the trooper that activated the skill.
Yep. It should be pretty much a place as long as it has a actual path to go there. That's one of the comfortable ways that you'll be moving them. Maybe you'll move a link team up there to do it. More importantly, on interacting with the beacon in the center, is that your specialists can only interact with it once each turn. So each specialist, you're only going to do it once. It doesn't require a roll, though, so pretty easy to kick that ball around. Then we look at your consoles on the sides, and the consoles will do a couple of different things. These ones do require a whip roll from a specialist to do, and you're going to pass that whip roll, and then you can either nudge the beacon 2 inches, or you can magnetize it towards the center of the board 6 inches. So it's really far away. Send that bad boy back. And notably for this one as well, each specialist can only declare it once per game round, just like the beacon. And those are largely the ways that you're going to be moving that beacon around.
And each console can only be activated by a player once until the opponent has also activated that console.
That is so weird.
Yeah, so you have to alternate between the two, and your opponent has to also alternate between the two, so it prevents you from just bam, 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 and then just keep knocking it up the field. And so you kind of have to do a console, and then send other specialists up the center with the thing. It's very specialist heavy.
Yeah.
You're going to want like 6 specialists.
Yeah. In my notes, I have specialist heavy missions, so I agree with you there. It's so odd. They put the restriction that you can't activate it multiple times in a round when you just can't activate it multiple times, period.
Yeah.
Until it's been activated by your opponent.
Yep.
Good to know.
So it's a fun one. Like even if it's second round, until your opponent activates it, you're still ineligible to tap that thing again.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's kind of an interesting way to deny that extra movement of the beacon, though I would argue that it might not be worthwhile most of the time, because if they've done that twice, they've probably gotten a bit of movement out of it, and so now you have some ground to make up. But it can be worth it
Plus,
if
you
you
had to
can
control the consoles, so.
Right, you wanna sit on the console anyway. Yeah, and you do that each round. So it's a lot of back and forth kind of wrestling control over this beacon. And the ability for each specialist to only activate, basically to do anything in the round once, is pretty significant, which, like you guys both said, that means you want to have a good number of specialists, you want things with some mobility, things that I think this mission values combat specialists quite a bit, like things that either are just incidentally specialists, but you take them for their combat prowess, or, you know, vice versa, where you have a really good specialist, but they're actually a competent combatant. Like those things, I think will help a lot.
You know who has plenty of those?
Aleph?
Castrol.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. They do have a fair few. Yeah, what sorts of things are you guys looking for? Either kind of broad strokes with like types of units, or units with a couple skills or pieces of equipment, or even specific units if you have some in mind. Like, what strikes you as important? If you see this on the docket, what do you immediately think of?
Well, outside of specialists, specifically specialists with forward deployment or infiltration. Combat jump can be useful, but I would prefer in this case infiltration or forward deployment. I want to have those guys starting right at the exclusion zone so that theoretically I can get to a console or the beacon in one order. Back that up with some heavy hitters, which may be the specialists themselves, depending on what they've done or what they're loaded out with, so that you can clear the pathway. That's kind of the key to my mind, is things that are already starting as close as possible. Also, even better if they're fast. Generally, if it's going to be forward deployed infiltrate, it's not going to be more than 4/4 move. But here and there, there's some things. But even with that 16-inch deployment, if you've got something that moves 6'2", or you got like a bike that's moving real fast, or something that can get up there in 1 to 2 orders, fantastic.
I think you're totally right there, with, of course, more specialists, but just kind of piggybacking on that, I never really find use for this skill, but I think if you have access to strategic deployment, that can really help balance in this mission, because you've got that 16-inch deployment zone. So now you're deploying that link team up to 20 inches, and you probably have like 2 specialists in that link team. So you can really get some movement out of that beacon.
Yeah.
Depending on which model you're using that has that, and what they can link with you, I mean, you could potentially have a whole core team of specialists and just bing, 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 all the way up the board.
Yeah, like ISS, considering pheasants can go in most teams and all have strategic deployment.
Yeah.
So you get to deploy your core on the line, potentially.
So at Rio Grande, they're playing Last Launch and Armory. So there's going to be an armory in the center of the room, or of the table. So you take that deployment and you're like, sweet, I'm up next to the walls on this armory. You can't see me. What are we doing here?
Yeah, if you're going first, that's going to be a little rough.
Well, remember, they took that exclusion zone out of Last Launch, so you can just start in the armory.
No, Last Launch, it has a restriction there.
Oh, okay,
you can't be in the armory, but you can be anywhere else.
Cool.
I actually think, because of border skirmishers, a combat jumper is actually a really good option for this mission, especially because they almost all have super jump. And so the first thing that comes to my mind is a Garuda Forward Observer because they can land without a roll 4 inches away from it, jump forward 4 inches, 6 inches back, and trigger the beacon for free
Yeah.
and really start hauling.
Yeah. They're so fast. What is it? 10-inch jump?
Yeah, it's a 10-inch jump, and it has jet propulsion, meaning it can move forward and retro thruster it back to your RDZ or whichever direction you're going, really.
Sick.
So then you can even be controlling it. Like that could be if you're going second, you could pretty easily get a Garuda over to one of those, to that rather, and move it around.
That's an interesting point that you bring up too, because I completely forgot about the border skirmishes. That's a good idea.
Yeah, and actually that might be worth mentioning again, just for people that might not be familiar. Border skirmishes is a special ITS rule for season 16, where effectively you can either walk on with parachutist or land with combat jump, touching the edge of an exclusion zone with up to one trooper. Normally, you can't do that, of course. It prevents you from deploying in it. But if you combat jump, it can be anywhere along the perimeter of that exclusion zone, and you don't need to roll for it, which is quite nice. Because my poor Garudas are only PH 11.
Yeah.
They're not very good at dropping in, but they're so fast.
Pretty awesome to just show up.
Exactly.
Some of the other things that I would think of bringing specifically for Shinden Butai, as Ian is playing right now, is nanoscreen on your specialist. It's amazing. So you have that in like Kestrel, you have some of that in Shasvasti and whatnot. You show up with them and like, hey, I can really control this beacon and be in cover and just be completely comfortable about it. So durable units that can sit on the beacon and, have cover or have some sort of obfuscation. If you're playing Steel Phalanx, you got plenty of mimetism around and people don't want to be close to your good CC homies. So great options there. And I mean, even if you're not fortunate enough to have like a nanoscreen specialist, just run, the nanoscreen gunfighter, like, any of the other fortunate people, Sheskin and Agili. Yeah, that'd be cool. Or, any of those big units that might even be able to dump a very good suppression fire.
Yeah. I think that this is also a pretty interesting use case for deployable cover.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Where normally it doesn't feel like it's a particularly powerful ability. Like this is something where you could draw a line in the sand and say, all right, well, I'm going to be able to hold this beacon here. And then on my last turn, I'll throw it onto your half the table for the points and jump into contact with it.
It's a really good shout. I've seen incredible lack of deployable cover, and that's a phenomenal place to use it.
Yeah, it is a very rare ability. I want it to be more useful.
Deployable cover makes me sad.
Why does it make you sad?
Because I keep taking it and I've never actually used it.
Yeah.
I have used it.
I keep intending to use it and it never comes up for me.
Yeah. Just get someone to play, what's her name? Luna against you. Then you can be like, okay, you got your triangulated fire, so you don't care about the negative anyways.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Sounds about right.
Then you drop your Vitrofero. You'll be very safe, I promise.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 6 armor.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I want to find more occasion to use it. And I think B-Pong is a place where that could work. I haven't actually tried it out. I haven't played B-Pong enough since that's changed. But deployable cover is also one of those things that typically you choose for your engineer to either have that or a turret. And now it does feel like more of a choice.
Right.
Yeah, since the turret's so restricted now.
Turrets are very limited.
I'm okay with this.
Which I don't love.
I do.
I appreciate they are more limited. I think that they are too limited. Because it's just a really interesting thing to have in the game.
No, I will concede that, but having played against several I'm going to spam turrets lists, it is
I'm glad it's not an option.
Not very fun.
Fair. Yeah, I rarely saw more than 3 at a time in a game, which didn't feel too bad to me. But if you start getting into, 5, 6 plus, I could see that being really obnoxious.
Yeah.
Almost like you take one down and, here, have another one.
You're like,
yeah.
I think there's going to be a lot of value in having good ARO presence for this mission as well.
Absolutely.
Because the mission is really order intensive and control intensive, right? So if you're playing CA or JSA, well, actually, there's so many factions with these now. Your hidden deployment, heavy rocket launcher or missile launcher characters, those are going to have a incredible amount of value. Somebody shows up to go and control those objectives. You can, maybe wait to pop to see them then instead of trying to hit the juicy link team earlier.
Yeah, I feel like this really emphasizes durable units as well, because there's a lot that you have to sit on. I mean, generally it's only 2 game objects, but when both players are trying to do that, that's kind of a lot to have to deal with because everybody's kind of generally going to the same place. So
Yeah.
units that can hold their own and kind of not give ground, I think are really good. More Aleph examples come to mind. Surprise. Maximus seems
Yeah.
great.
I think he's the pinnacle of durability outside Karakuri.
Yeah, I mean, because they have enhanced, yeah, I could see it. Like, he's more resistant overall,
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
yeah. He also has enough close combat threat that nobody exactly wants to jump in and punch him, generally speaking. I mean, there are a few exceptions, like the Hatamoto comes to mind. The Hatamoto doesn't care.
Hatamoto is the best thing.
It's so cool.
They are neat.
I have such a hard time taking a list without him.
I could see that. I feel like that would definitely be one of those units that it fills a lot of roles. And like in this mission, it's also they're always a specialist. So they can move the beacon, they can activate the console, they can cross ground without giving up cover. They're exceptionally good melee combatants.
Oh yeah.
They're good ranged combatants.
Solid.
They can do a lot.
Yeah.
Kind of piggybacking off of always a specialist. I don't know, it's not really reliable, but those tactical support cards we were talking about at the beginning, a lot of them have give a specialist blank, which
Yeah.
is great on the Hatamoto.
True. Yeah, you can do some cool stuff with those.
Now he's also censored too.
Yeah.
Or a glue gun.
Yeah. Or an emitter.
Blitzen.
Blitzen.
Okay.
EM something.
I was going to lose
Yes.
Whatever. He's at EM something.
It's only an emitter if you're near a baggage bot.
Yeah.
But complete tangent counter tick.
it.
What's I find it a little odd that sensor doesn't cancel stealth.
Yeah. That weird?
I know it never has, but it feels like it
Mhm.
should. Like you can't camo within range of sensor, but you can sneak around.
Especially with spotlight canceling sensor. Or
Canceling stealth, yeah. Just really kind of odd. I was just thinking about because you gave that example.
CB,
Wait a minute.
listen.
Censor's rare enough. I would actually be okay with this.
Same.
Like everybody can take it, but it's usually on a very, very specific single model in a faction. And maybe
Usually.
a small handful outside of that.
Mhm.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't take it. Until they run into enough hidden deployment stuff and then they kind of figure it out.
Yeah, your FO bot is definitely kind of hit or miss. Some people take them very frequently, but I find a lot of players
Mhm.
don't bring in.
Let's talk strategy. My first question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you snap pick second?
I don't think so. I think that the advantage for second, I don't think it is automatically strong enough.
It's a control mission.
No.
I think it depends on the table. Because if there are lanes where you can reasonably throw and have good arrows that you can reliably poke at things that are headed towards the objectives, I think I would pick deployment in that case and see if my opponent's willing to give me 2nd or not. On a more dense table where those long arrows are not really very feasible, I might. Because one, that means I am less likely to be attacked across the board quickly by my opponent if they're going first, and that I'm not really going to be able to dictate the flow of movement nearly as well. I think no, because of table.
I can agree with all your points.
No. Although I do like going first in this mission dependent upon my faction and what I'm taking and my opponent's faction. Because if I can go first and I can get right onto the beacon in the consoles, especially with my stuff that's infiltrated up right at that mark, and I can get that beacon maybe 8-10 inches into their half of the board and just sit on the consoles, it makes it a lot harder for them to be able to come back, especially if I'm able to take out some key pieces on my way up. But that's going to be very faction and list dependent on doing. But I like the potential of just being able to rocket that beacon into their half of the board pretty decisively in the first turn.
Yeah.
Interesting. I feel like it's really risky because it makes it easier for them to attack whatever piece is controlling it.
Mhm.
Sure, there's more impetus for them to push it back, but they have, in that case, 3 turns to get it back on the other half of the table.
Mhm.
So that would be my worry in that scenario. Like, I don't know if I'd want to push it towards my opponent. I feel like my instinct is usually to draw it back
Same.
so that it's easy for me to defend and harder for my opponent to attack.
And then try to get a kick towards the last turn.
So I just like getting it up there and then just having several really nasty models like the Hatamoto that you just don't want to come after in the first place.
I'm in your face. Deal with me.
Yeah, because that's a model where you can say I'm in your face, deal with me, and they kind of have to choose whether or not they're going to, because if they do, it's good chance it's not going to go in their favor.
Yeah. Counterpoint to going second definitely has a benefit to this mission.
Yeah.
Counterpoint to that, this mission also doesn't have retreat.
Yeah.
So you can just go first. Like if
Mhm.
you build your list with, I'll use Combined Army, for example, with Dukash on your list, right? He gets to show up in the deployment zone, do largely what he wants. If your opponent is not equipped for that, that can end really poorly and you could just sweep through their back line and do, the Lord's work. Similarly for JSA, Shinobu or in Oniwaban, if you are playing the appropriate versions, if you can really get in there and just do as much damage as possible, you don't even have to focus on the mission on turn 1 for the most part. Because if you do enough damage and you have like a ninja or a shrouded or what have you as a midfield specialist, you just walk and you're controlling the objective and the beacon. So you're having a good time.
True. Yeah. I mean, depending, you could even, if you're willing to trade a command token for an order, you could coordinate 2 forward
Yeah.
deployed models as like the end of your first turn, more or less, just to make sure you have something on it and spend the rest just trying to mow down as much as you can or find those linchpin targets and get rid of them if possible.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there is definitely some merit there. I think that is a high risk play, but
Right.
it could just win you the game outright if you are able to pull it off.
I have noticed that the very humble Flashbot is very good in this mission because you just like, I just want to control it for 1 turn. You can kill him. I don't care.
Mhm.
And then you just roll up there, control an objective, and then you move on with your day.
Sure.
I feel like this is a mission where Mirage 5 just dominates.
Yup.
They come in and you
Can.
just, if you are not ready for them, you don't have anything to contest the objectives.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true of most missions. Is that if you walk in with a parachutist deployment zone against an unprepared player, that they
I know,
probably
it's
have a
just
bad
that one in
time.
particular because it's such a nasty combo, and then it's just like, yeah, we killed everything. Well, we left Joe sitting over there in the corner weeping to himself while everybody else goes and does the mission.
Right? Yeah. So, I mean, there are definitely multiple approaches to the mission, which I think is definitely a good sign for the mission overall. I think that that's pretty telling that you can take a more aggressive or a more measured approach and potentially have success with both of those.
Question for you guys as well.
Mhm.
So B-Pong is in a 5 mission lineup.
Mhm.
Is this a mission that you build a list for specifically? Obviously, it depends on faction, but in a general broad scope, what do you think?
I think it's going to really depend on what the other missions are, because that answer is B-Pong the only specialist heavy mission, or is countermeasures also in the lineup? Because I could use the same list for both of those.
That's what I was
Mhm.
thinking too.
Is B-Pong in the lineup and then like Firefight? Because I don't want to run the same list for both of those.
Yeah.
Because that's way too many specialists to give up points on. Yeah, I think it's going to be dependent upon the other missions in the lineup and their requirements. But if this is the only specialist heavy mission, very possibly, yes.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat where I think that very broad strokes kind of generalize the ITS packet into killy missions, objective heavy missions, and oddballs. I don't think that this is an oddball. I think that it is very different in terms of the positioning and how you need to be able to control the midfield, but I don't think it's enough to make it feel significantly different than another objective heavy mission in terms of what tools you
Sure.
need to have access to, at least. If it is the oddball of the lineup, obviously, but I don't think it
Mhm.
is enough by itself,
Yeah.
generally speaking. What about you? Do you feel like this is something you customize specifically for in a lineup? This is your odd list?
I think so. I think that the benefits to going second or first, depending on, like if I'm playing Svalorheima, for example, really not that great at getting into your opponent's deployment zone. Can do it for sure, but hard to completely wipe your opponent.
Mhm.
It would definitely influence my picks here. I can use an example. So Rio Grande Retribution is at the
Yeah.
end of May, and this is in their lineup. Their lineup is Last
Mhm.
Launch, B-Pong, Highly Classified, Armory, and Unmasking. So it's definitely a consideration as I'm building my lists. It's going to be very similar to Unmasking because I'm going to want those forward deploying specialists and stuff to go and help with the mission. Same with Highly Classified. I
Mhm.
think I would build it a little differently than Highly Classified because Highly Classified is, a very specialist / oddball mission. I
Fair.
think the things to note about this mission are maybe you would want to have 3 hidden deployment infiltrators to really just, like acquisition, just get some control on the table.
Or somebody goes for that console and you're just like, haha, surprise.
Surprise, I dodge into you. Maybe.
Yeah, it's possible. Tricky. But yeah, I agree. I think that definitely helps. Like, that's definitely a unit type that I think could really benefit you in this mission, which, again, any sort of hidden deployment specialist, like, is best if you're going second using them in that purpose. So you can, like, all right, well, I'm on the line, so I can short skill move onto the objective and dodge if I need to, or shoot at something that's there, or go CC it, or whatever, and pretty handily grab that. It is an interesting mission, and I do think that
Mhm.
I like it more so
I agree.
now. I had played it once or twice before, and I wasn't a huge fan, but I think now it's in a pretty good spot. I also think that area denial tools are going to be really important here as well. Like, if you can get mines or koalas or even just disposable template throwers, since they are still around, in the ballpark of objectives, that can go a long way.
Oh yeah.
Morans seem really, really good in this mission in
Yeah.
general. I mean, Morans
I
are
was
good
gonna follow
kind
you
of
up.
just
When are they
always.
bad, huh?
Yeah, a
Yeah.
firefight, maybe?
Touche.
It's rare. But yeah, so those sorts of things are really, really helpful. I think that it's also worth keeping in mind potentially some InfoWar presence because of the desire for durable units to hold things. That could go a long way, because a lot of the things we've been talking about, not all of them, but a lot of them are heavy infantry or tags, even in some cases. Sensor, obviously, is something worth slapping in if you
Just draw it
can.
on the card. You're fine.
Yeah,
Just draw. Yeah, it's easy. You've got 2 chances. That's like a roughly 100%.
every time.
Yeah, so those are some things that can kind of help insulate you against some of these tactics that we've mentioned and make you a little more able to resist those attacks that your opponent might have or things that they're using to jump onto those objectives. Any other things that kind of stand out to you guys in terms of things you might want to have on hand to counter your opponent doing what you were trying to do?
you know, missiles. Missiles solve all your problems. Hidden deployment.
Ooh,
No, nothing in particular.
hidden missiles.
I might want some sort of unit that's good at CC. When I'm looking at
Mhm.
the approaching tournament, I'm expecting a armory box in every single table And I know that
Right,
the
right.
beacon is going to be in one of those corners in the armory box. So I want a close combat unit that can get in there and clear it with high dodge as well.
So yeah, but with that, I think that we are about ready to move on to our final thoughts on B-Pong. But we just want to give a quick thank you to our patrons for supporting the show. We really, really appreciate it. It helps alleviate costs on us for hardware replacements or subscriptions and other pieces of software and things like that. So thank you all very much for doing that. And if you are interested in supporting us financially, you can do so at patreon.com/metachemistry. And we have a couple tiers with a handful of different benefits, like early access to episodes, final voting in polls, some exclusive access to some channels on our Discord, and things like that to kind of show our gratitude. And if not, you can join us on Patreon as a free member, and you can see all of our posts and things like that. There wouldn't be any extra benefits, but you can kind of keep on top of our regular feed and check out those posts. And as far as our Discord itself, you can find that in the show notes as always. It's a good place to talk shop about Infinity and show off painted models, talk about lists, go over all kinds of crazy tables and all kinds of fun projects that we see in there. So we'd love to have you if you're looking for more places to talk Infinity or just say hi to us. We'd love to hear from you. And so with that said, Azoka, Ian, final thoughts on B-Pong.
You know, I'm just going to double down on what you said in my response to Snap picking second, where look at the table and you really need to. We obviously all, maybe not obviously, but I believe that deployment is the hardest part about Infinity. So I think that
It's tricky.
taking the time to make the correct decision in choosing initiative or deployment at the table will pay dividends in your performance of this mission. Sure, it might eat into your time at, like, let's say you're at a tournament, you have a 2-hour time limit. I think it's worth it to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a good idea to check those fire lanes, see what's defensible, see where the position of the objectives are, think about where you might land, what does that exclusion zone look like? Yeah, absolutely.
I don't love this mission. That said,
fair.
I think this iteration is a lot better than the prior version. It can be a lot of fun, and especially if you have the right matchup of opponent where you're both not necessarily taking it super serious, but it can be fun in that regard. I don't love the mission. I think that there is almost just a little too much going on, but it is a lot better in this iteration. But I'm not going to be upset if I see this mission in a lineup. While I have cooled a little bit on this, I would be less upset seeing this mission in a lineup than if I see Unmasking or Mind Wipe in a lineup. Because again, both of those missions
Sure.
Great, but you see them all the
I
time.
don't love, but like they show up over and over and over. If I have to play a mission that I don't love, it's got some novelty to it if it's B-Pong.
Sure. I can see that. I really like unmasking.
Unmasking
it's
can
fun.
go die. It's a good mission, but there was, a couple seasons ago, it was at every single tournament that we attended over and over and over. And it's like, why? This mission is not
It's good practice.
that interesting. And in fact, because it's so order intensive in what you have to do, you have to do this before you can do this, before you can do this, that it just bogs down. And I personally do not enjoy it. And then having to play it at like 6 events in a row just really killed it for me.
Yeah.
I'm not that upset about B-Pong in comparison.
Oh, good. Yeah, I think B-Pong kind of tests a lot of fundamentals. Like you could say that about a fair few missions, I think, but B-Pong really wants you to pay attention to your deployment, which I think is every mission, but it wants you to pay attention very much to how you defend, wants you to pay very much attention to how you attack, and wants you to pay very much attention to how you position. And I think it takes kind of a good blend of skills to have a good showing with this mission. Like it can be very tricky. And I agree to an extent that it is a little fiddly in some respect, where There's a lot of, you can do this thing once, or once per turn, or once until another requirement is met type actions, which can be a little bit of extra mental overhead to deal with. But I think that overall, it's a pretty interesting mission, and I agree that it is definitely better in its current iteration. It has multiple approaches, like we've talked about. We could find not only, oh, well, I think it'd be better to go first because you can attack with abandon, or I like to go second so that I can get last say in objectives. But beyond that, we were also just talking about, oh, well, Ian, you like to push the objective into the opponent and keep the pressure on. And Azoka and I are talking about, well, we want to hold it on our side. We don't want to push it over for the points until we need to at the end and be more cagey. And so I think there's a lot of nuance into how you can approach the mission, which is really interesting. And I like that it is specialist heavy. Just generally, I like specialists being an important part of Infinity. I think that's kind of almost of a core
It's a good
tenet.
sell for the game.
Yeah, you need to have guys that are there to get the job done, not just pull the trigger. Sometimes those can be the same thing, but not always. And having units like that in the game and them having such an important role is really appealing to me in both kind of the mechanical and in the narrative
Yeah.
of how the game plays out. So I'm looking forward to playing a little bit more B-Pong because it's not a mission that I've gotten a chance to play frequently. But now that it is a little bit less of a headache, I think that it is much more interesting to kind of throw out on a pickup game than it might have been prior. On behalf of Metachemistry, this has been Devin.
Azoka?
And Ian. And that's the meta.